Hello. So today I'm going to talk to you about tick preventions. So there's a lot of different things you need to consider when you're picking a tick prevention for your pet. Not every pet needs to be on tick prevention like it is recommended for flea prevention because there are some environments that ticks just don't live. But if you take your animal out in anywhere with long grass, with trees, if you go walk on trails, then tick prevention is something you need to consider. So, a lot of our flea and tick preventions will actually not have the same effective time frame for fleas versus ticks, or even for every species of tick. So, for example, our oral flea and tick prevention that prevents fleas for 3 months, there are some species of ticks that it is only labeled to cover for 2 months. So that is something that you have to consider whenever you're buying a product. Do you live in an area that has a high number of that tick that is a little bit harder to prevent? Now, the biggest thing that I consider whenever I am picking a tick prevention is one, what diseases are in the area, and two, how quickly does that tick prevention kill ticks that are on the animal? So, the reason for that is my favorite example is Lyme disease. So, there's case studies about how long a tick has to be attached to transmit Lyme disease. And the average time frame is 36 to 48 hours. That's how long a tick has to be attached to an animal to transmit that disease. There are some oral tick preventions that on the label state that it takes 48 to 72 hours for it to kill a tick once it is attached to an animal. So that is why some animals will be very consistently on flea and tick prevention and still come up positive for those tick-borne diseases, is because the tick died, but it was attached long enough to transmit the disease. That's why I have some very specific products that I like to use myself, because they have a shorter window of how long it takes to kill those ticks. So you get less transmission of the disease. Now, I should say, our tick-borne diseases, if we're testing for them in-house, those tests can be a little tricky because they don't necessarily test for active disease. They test for if they've ever been exposed to the disease. So if you have an animal that is new to you, say you adopted or whatnot, you have it on tick prevention, they do that first test and it comes back positive, that doesn't necessarily mean your tick prevention is failing. They could have been exposed to that disease beforehand. But this is a good one to have an in-depth discussion with your veterinarian based on your lifestyle, where you live, the diseases, and the types of ticks that are in the environment to help you pick the prevention that you want.